After much planning, expense, and frustration at uncommitted players, my summer run of Red Hand of Doom set in Aberron took off. Out of the original 6 PCs I had expected, I only ended up with 4, with each player handling 2 characters. Holden Magreen, Dwarf Crusader 5, affiliated with the Silver Flame and de facto party leader. Lovin Magreen, Warforged Scout Rogue 5, Holden's adopted brother. Ashidi Giaurn, Human Artificer 5, affiliated with House Orion. Kikini Urish Tai, Kalish Tarp Zion 5. 3 of the above names are rather silly puns. Tongue sticking out. Anyway, since the campaign has a different setting, I took some liberties with the adventure intro and added a prologue. The PCs started out in Flame Keep, the capital of Thrain, seat of the Church of the Silver Flame's power. Awakened in the middle of the night by a summons to the cathedral, the PCs dragged themselves out of bed. They were called by Jayla Darren herself, the 11-year-old keeper of the flame. She explained to the PCs that she had been seeing disturbing visions of hobgoblin warriors stirring in the eastern wilderness of Breland, and that among them were dragons and other creatures of great power. The visions would always culminate in the image of a great clawed hand sweeping across all of Curvair, and blackness in the end, and a whisper 5 sorrows. Kikini and Holden know that 5 sorrows in Draconic is Tiamat, the daughter of Kyber and one of the most powerful demon overlords with the power to corrupt and enslave dragons. If she somehow breaks free, she can single-handedly plunge all of Aberron into another age of demons. On the other hand, the dragons of Argonnissen could perceive the threat and launch an apocalyptic invasion of Curvair, like they did to Zendrike ages ago. Either way, death and destruction will rain from the sky onto the continent. Jayla sends the PCs on a downsized chartered lightning rail train to Vathirand, the easternmost city of Breland, immediately. The train ride is uneventful and comfortable for the most part. The Silver Flame had chartered a first-class cart for the PCs, so everyone was comfortable except perhaps for Ashidi, who couldn't stand the smell of Holden's homemade, alcoholic gravy which he poured on everything he ate. At the end of a long day of travel and 2 hours from their destination, a tall, broad-shouldered female guard tells the PCs that they're close, and they might want to get some rest since they arrive late at night. Kikini and Holden decide to go to sleep. Ashidi stays the hell away from Holden, while Lovin sits on guard due to his lack of need for sleep. Soon after, the lights in the cabin go out. Asha hears something walking along the roof, and Lovin rushes to wake his brother up. Asha wakes up the sleeping Kikini, just as she realizes the train is accelerating. Asha tries to walk up to the front of the cart so she could check up on the engine car, but the door opens. It's the female guard who'd told them to sleep earlier, and she asks if something was the matter. Asha asks if something is the matter, because the lights went out and the train seems to be accelerating. The escort snarls, saying she can't let the PCs go any further, and draws a black blade, curved greatsword. Roll initiative. The PCs are trapped in the narrow aisle in this order. Holden, Lovin, Space, Kikini, Asha. Initiative goes as follows: Holden, Lovin, Asha, Rax Hassa, Kikini. Due to the darkness, only Holden can see properly. Holden goes first, but is rendered unable to attack or move by the lack of space. He moves in front of Lovin. Lovin attempts to tumble past the assassin but fails, ending up where he started. Asha retreats to make room for the frontliners and get a light infusion going. The monster is next, and she changes shape into a slick-skinned, eel-headed humanoid form. Kikini can see in the shadowy light from the door that the monster has backwards twisted hands, the mark of a Rax Hassa. They were usually spellcasters, but this one is evidently a warrior of some sort, a Natian Rax Hassa. Somehow, the agents of Tiamat were onto them. Kikini attempts to get out of the way, drawing a slash from the Rax Hassa. Already injured, she has no other recourse but to blast the Rax Hassa with energy missile. The hit connects, but does little to slow down the beast. Holden then takes his turn, and is able to land a solid mountain hammer, breaching the fiend's damage reduction. Lovin again tries to tumble past, but fails miserably and draws an AOO which thankfully misses. Meanwhile, the train continues to accelerate to bone-shattering speeds. Asha's light finally gets going, and she casts it on Lovin. The little Warforged scout glowed like a disco ball, allowing everyone to finally see clearly. She manages to run past the Rax Hassa into the engine without getting AOO'd, but Holden yells after her, "It's dangerous for you to go alone." The Rax Hassa tries to lay the dwarf open using its Ghost Blade maneuver, and deals significant damage. Kikini uses Constrictor's Touch, wrenching the Rakshas's outfit into an uncomfortable position. For a while, This is the only damage they get, as everything else just bounces off the Rakshas's DR and Lovin fails to tumble past repeatedly. Ashi reaches the control room of the engine and sees the dragon-marked pilot of the train lying dead. Since she was the only other character with an Orion dragon mark, she attempts to gain control of the train, over and over again, while the Rakshasa severely injures Holden with its Shadow Garrote strike. He thankfully makes the fort save, or else he'd have been vulnerable to the Rakshas's sneak attack in the next round. Kikini activates interstitial armor and stays back. After another series of unsuccessful attacks by Holden and Lovin, the Rakshasa changes to its elusive adversary form and runs off into the train's engine. Everyone gives chase, with Holden picking up his adopted brother and dropping him inside the train engine car so that he can run close enough to flank. Ashi realizes she has an angry displacer beast-like monster charging at her with a great sword, so she decides to drop the lightning rains first and use a line weapon on her crossbow, the only way they'll get to deal any damage to the Rakshasa. Lovin gets as close as he can, attempting to tumble past so he can flank the Rakshasa, but his checks just keep falling short. The Rakshasa takes one step toward him and hacks into him viciously with its great sword and then takes a bite. All three attacks connect, injuring the rogue within an inch of his life. Kikini steps up and shoves the Rakshasa hard against the ceiling with telekinetic thrust. The Rakshasa falls far enough to take even more damage. Holden is unable to go any further, and unsuccessfully tries to hit the Rakshasa while it's on the ground. Lovin withdraws into the first-class cart to prevent his impending scrapping at the monster's hands. Asha takes a shot with her crossbow but misses, and decides to just turn her attention to stopping the train from hurtling out of control. Although the PCs have been experiencing great difficulty in dealing with it, the Rakshasa decides it can't do enough damage in this condition and tries to run out the door, successfully tumbling past Holden, but failing to get past Kikini. Everyone panics, thinking the fiend was really trying to kill Lovin. Holden again tries to strike unsuccessfully, and Lovin switches to his bow. Due to the light spell cast on him, however, he has no real way to hide. Without the light, the rest of the party is unable to fight in the dark. The Rakshasa, however, unexpectedly veers right past him and climbs onto the roof of the first-class car. Everyone agrees that it would be a good idea to disconnect the rear carts and leave the Rakshasa there, but Kikini remembers that there was one more cart to the rear. She runs with everything she's got, risking getting left behind with an angry Rakshasa to check if there are still people in the back. She gets to the rear, sees the door to the galley cart in the rear hanging open. She calls out, but nobody answers. Deciding that she's risked enough, she decides it's time to run back. Ashi remembers she left her homunculus and iron defender behind in the first-class cart and orders it to run up to her. Holden and Lovin successfully decouple the train, and the rear carts begin to decelerate. Just as Kikini is about to run back, however, the Rakshasa drops down right beside her and gives her a vicious slash, dropping her to 1 HP. The player faces a tough decision: escape with her life or die trying to jump across the widening gap between the train cars. She decides that Kikini would rather risk running and provoke the AOO instead of withdrawing. Running would take her further and allow her to get close enough to the front of the cart before the gap widens any further. She provokes the AOO. The Rakshasa rolls a 20. Not wanting to see the party blaster die in the first encounter, I give her the alternative choices that she could do. She could withdraw, spend a full round action to gain Shinic focus to activate her speed of thought feat, giving her a boost to her jump to clear the widening gap, or withdraw and then just jump the next round. She decides it's better to have a lower bonus than to have a higher DC, and withdraws, intending to make a running jump the next round. The Rakshasa furiously pursues Kikini, but she runs across and makes her jump. Rolling low, she spends an action point to clear the gap as Holden catches her. Left behind, the Rakshasa snarls at them from the first-class cart while they pull away. I ended the session there. The party handled the encounter surprisingly well, considering the Natian Rakshasa was CR7 and the terrain was very unfavorable, not to mention the uncontrolled elemental in the train's engine. The part is still considering using Kikini's energy bolt to rip through the carriage's floor with sonic blasts, destroying the mounting of its conductor stones and sending the whole thing off the track. It was a really bad move of Asha to cast light on the guy who relied on stealth, although it would have been even harder to fight blind. DR 15/good and piercing and the 50% mischance would have made it almost impossible to damage the Rakshasa. Now that the PCs have finished the intro, I'll be dumping them into the adventure proper, starting off from Vathirand, which replaces Denovar in the adventure, and taking the 120-mile journey from there to Drellin's Ferry via chartered House Orion coach. From there, the party is going to see a lot less of civilized Kerver. Eastern Breland is quite easily the middle of nowhere, bordered by the Mornland, wasteland of a country destroyed in the last war, to the east, Darguin, fledgling goblinoid nation, to the south, and mostly open plains and savanna to the west. The nearest large city to the west, Sterilasker, is a good 1,000 miles away. The threat of Azarkol's Red Hand of Doom cult is too remote to be dealt with by a large mobilization of Breland's army, and Thrain of course isn't willing to send its military into another country's territory. Azarkol's immediate objective after crushing Elser Vale and Vathiround is to march east to the Mornland, where an enormous arcane Kyber seal sends power to Tiamat's prison proper, the Pit of Five Sorrows in Argon-Nissen. There are 5 such seals across the world, but weakening the seal will allow Tiamat to send in more and more of her aspects, bolstering the Hobgoblin cleric's power and allowing them to face off with Breland's considerable military might. He's even made a pact with the self-appointed Prince of the Mornland, a rogue troll warlord who has brought his band of mercenary berserkers into the Red Hand military. The border with the Mornland, after all, is not guarded well. If Azarkol manages to breach the first Kyber seal, it could either give him a massive boost in power or it could provoke a draconic invasion the likes of which have not been seen since the dragons destroyed Zendrike. Session 2. The Terminal. Ashe, the Artificer, successfully brought the train's berserk air elemental under control. Slowing down the train would mean the rest of the trip takes 2 hours, while keeping it at maximum speed means they arrive at the terminal in less than 30 minutes at the risk of losing control of the train again, derailing, or smashing into the Vathiround terminal, likely killing themselves and a lot of people in the process. Deciding to play it safe and avoid an imminent crash, Ashe slows down the train. Kikini, the Kalish Tarp Scion, having been dropped to 1 HP in the previous encounter, is healed with a wand of lesser vigor. Knowing that the party is now riding 1/3 of the train they'd departed Flamekeep in, and that the said remaining third of the train contains several dead crew members, the party figures out what to tell the authorities at Vathiround. After weighing the pros and cons of lying and Holden, the dwarf Silver Flame Crusader says he's beholden to tell the truth, and so they reluctantly agree. The train arrives at Vathiround, and Father Larister, the local contact, is shocked to see that only 1/3 of the train is left. Holden quickly tells him they were attacked, and Larister quickly calls in his guards to seal off the train before anybody tries to investigate, much to the chagrin of the House Orion personnel in the station. Larister brings the PCs to go to the Silver Flame Diocese so he can brief them further. At the diocese, the PCs explain exactly what happened. Larister is shocked, but since the PCs successfully identified the assassin as Arax Hassa, Larister explains that it wasn't a random attack. Arax Hassa, who stayed in close proximity to them for hours, wouldn't have made a mistake. The attack was a deliberate assassination attempt, and the PCs have also come to this conclusion. Intrigued by the turn of events, Larister says that they may be up against more than just a warband of hobgoblin bandits. Larister explains where they're headed next, Drellin's Ferry, a town at the forefront of a lot goblin attacks. Since the town is in the middle of nowhere, we joked that Drellin's Ferry's town motto is, more nowhere than nowhere. There really is a town in central Breland named Nowhere, but at least the lightning rail system gets there. Drellin's Ferry is over 160 miles from the nearest station. Breland can't really mobilize an army to meet the threat of a few random bandit attacks. Said army would have to cross most of the country, and frankly, King Boranal is more concerned with the hostile Droamite attacks on Breland's western border than random bandit attacks in the east. The PCs have yet to make the Rakshasa Kyber Tiamat connection, but I expect they'll get there by the time they get to Wormlord Koth. Either way, Larister is convinced the PCs are up against more than just random bandit attacks. The PCs bed down for the night in the diocese, waking up to find a House Orion coach specially chartered for Drellin's Ferry. The coach driver/courier, Kien Orion, is a man of few words. Lovin, the Warforged scout rogue and the dwarf's adopted brother, says the carriage reminds him too much of the boxes humans put equipment in, and declares that he wants to ride on the coach's roof. Kien sarcastically tells him to enjoy the 160-mile ride. Lovin shuts up and sits in the carriage. Holden also opens up a letter that Larister slipped him as they left. The letter talks about Amory Vroth and his failed lycanthrope purging crusade into Elser Vale. Vroth was nasty, bloodthirsty, and altogether unlikable, and ultimately he was killed by the lycanthropes he was hunting. There are lots of rumors about him being infected with lycanthropy himself, or that his ghost haunts his old base in the Witchwood. Larrister simply asks Holden to check out Vroth Keep while he's at it, but the old vicar himself says he never really liked the guy. Marauders. The first encounter in the module. Kien spots the ambush for the PCs, and stops the carriage a few miles out of Drellin's Ferry, and in a dreadfully quiet manner, tells the PCs that there's an ambush just up ahead. The PCs get down. Kien hangs back to protect his cargo from looters, while the PCs engage. Roll initiative. The battle goes very, very badly for the hobgoblins. All of the archers miss their first attacks, and for the most part, miss over and over again for the entire encounter. Lovin decides to sneak into the woods and carries his bag of boulders, one of the most fun low-level items for rogues, ever. Asha lays down a wand entangle spell in the middle of the area, covering almost the entire map. However, since the trail down the center had no foliage, only the hobgoblins in the trees are entangled. Almost all of them fail. The only one who made the save was Hobgoblin A, the furthest down the right side of the map. Hobgoblin A constantly makes high saves and high attack rolls, even a couple of natural 20s. I dub him lucky henceforth. Kikini takes a round to get psionically focused. Soon after, Uthlar the Blade Bearer and Zar the Cleric rush out of the farmhouse, telling the PCs to attack the spellcaster. At this point, Ashi is the only person who's cast anything. The two of them rush down the path with the two Scorched Drakes, just the hellhounds I rescued to become bipedal lizards. The Scorched Drakes run at tremendous speed. One of the Scorched Drakes runs past Lovin, who throws a pebble from his bag of boulders. It would have likely been a fatal sneak attack, but unfortunately, he rolls horribly and misses. Holden, maul drawn, sets about bashing in heads on the left side of the map. He hits one hobgoblin, which he kills with a massive crit on his second turn. X3 crit equals win, with two hobgoblins dead, all but one of the archers entangled, and every single one of the hobgoblins rolling badly. It looks like it's over for them. Zar turns invisible. Uthlar runs at full tilt toward Kikini. Uthlar successfully lands an AOO on Kikini as she tries to slip away, while the archers keep firing at Asha. Kikini, with her 40-foot speed thanks to Speed of Thought, is able to get out of the way and shoots an electric energy bolt across the path, frying one of the Scorched Drakes and one of the archers. Asha buffs herself with shield. Uthlar pursues Kikini into the forest, but as he enters he passes by Lovin, who attempts to sneak him with his shortbow. The attack hits, but Uthlar's uncanny dodge prevents him from getting creamed by the sneak damage. One of the Scorched Drakes engages with Asha's Iron Defender Homunculus, damaging it for half its HP with a single bite. Holden charges the Scorched Drake with Battle Leader's Charge, reducing it to a fine red mist. Holden, 3, Red Hand, 0. The second wave of hobgoblins doesn't do much better. Most of them miss consistently, although a number of solid hits land on Kikini and Asha over the course of the battle, dropping them to single digits. Kikini responds in kind by killing almost all the second wave with one application of energy missile and then runs off into the forest. Asha, on the other hand, is unable to help much. A CL1 magic missile wand really doesn't do much. Uthlar pursues Kikini, and Holden follows. Asha orders her homunculus to chase down Uthlar as well. Holden saves Kikini with defensive rebuke, forcing Uthlar to attack him. The Blade Bearer obliges, cursing Holden in his language. Holden knows Goblin. I translate Uthlar's swearing as, "Your mother has less honor than a flea-bitten centaur whore," but his rolls are also bad. Only one of his wolf fang strikes hits, and his wall of blades counter to parry Holden's mountain hammer rolls a pathetic 3. Zar reappears behind Holden and nails him with an inflict moderate wounds. Holden fails his first save but uses his zealous surge to reroll his failed will save. He takes token damage. Lovin throws another charge of his bag of boulders from concealment, this time successfully attacking Zar. The cleric takes significant damage and is left bleeding. C/O Pathfinder rogue talent. Asha helps by pumping him with another shot of magic missile. The homunculus shakes down Uthlar, finally dropping him to exactly 0 HP. Only Zar and two hobgoblins, one still entangled and the other ready to piss in his pants, are left. Zar attempts to rally the two and uses his smite on Holden, but Holden has cover thanks to the foliage. Zar misses, and finally collapses due to blood loss. Holden makes sure he's dead with a coup de grace. The unentangled archer runs for the hills. The other one is stuck, and in no morale to fight anymore. Lovin walks up to him and executes him with an arrow to the back of the head. I changed the treasure here. I said one of Uthlar's short swords broke and replaced it with a bunch of low-level magic items that had been with the merchant whom the hobos had ambushed earlier. Same thing with Zar's armor, nobody needed it, and since the town doesn't offer much in the way of gear, I decided to scrap it. Loot. -1 Dark Light, Secrets of Sarlana. A very interesting magic item that can change ambient light when imbued with psionic power. Due to simply changing the ambient light and not emitting actual light, nobody can really pinpoint the bearer. The party finds it a very interesting item and thinks of all the various applications of the said lantern. Then they see another dark light already in Kikini's gear list. The character's loot was prepared by me in an emergency due to players being unable to come. They shrug and move on. Healing belt. Without a cleric, they needed it. Restful crystal. Now the dwarf doesn't take his armor off anymore. Ick. Eternal wand of shield. Everlasting rations. -355 GP. -1 Unconscious Hobgoblin Marauder. The party also hoovers the miscellaneous mundane gear and stacks it onto the carriage and ties up Uthlar beneath the carriage. They haul everything into town. Kien delivers his goods and leaves while the PCs talk to the militia. Tarnished silver. Due to my refluffing of Amory Vroth as an unlikable silver torch zealot who made life more than a little difficult for the fairy folk during the last war, the militia are wary of the PCs. However, desperate to have the hobgoblins dealt with, they're let into the town. Lovin nonchalantly drags Uthlar toward the old toll house while the two girls look for an inn. They decide on the old bridge, which is a house Galanda operation, the only one for miles around. The dwarf and the warforged start talking to Nora Wiston, and Sorina is impressed by how the PCs dealt with the ambush so easily. The women arrive just as Speaker Wiston offers a pay of 500 GP. Holden hates goblins so accepts off the bat, the others are fine with it. They tie up Uthlar in a cell. Holden equals Jack Bauer. Holden makes an intimidate check as Uthlar comes to. Uthlar's steely facade and pointed back ears melt away despite his +4 bonus to resist intimidate checks. He rolls low and Holden easily makes his point by smashing a chair into powder with his maul. Uthlar sings like a canary, telling the party about Wormlord Koth's base in Vroth Keep, and also mentions Azar Kull. He's not sure of the entire Horde's command structure, and gives no certain description of Tiamat's involvement. All the PCs know is that Tiamat is involved, since the hobgoblins keep raving about her, and that the holy symbols are carried was Tiamat's. The PCs puzzle over the title of Wormlord, but Uthlar doesn't know why that title was chosen. Holden explains to the party that the worship of Tiamat, a demon overlord, is unheard of among goblins. The ancient goblinoid Hakani Empire was agnostic, trusting in its own glory more than any gods. Dargyun, the nation of Lahesh Haruuk, at least publicly worships the sovereign host in order to appear more civilized. Other goblinoids in Dargyun may turn to the worship of the Dark Six, the sovereign host's dark brethren. An actual cult of a demon overlord is very, very rare, as most of them are in suspended animation. Ashi asks if there were other races involved. Uthlar snaps back at the artificer, saying that unlike humans, the people or the DAR have always considered themselves a single race with 3 different bloods. This is consistent with Aberon's goblinoid fluff, and that humans were fools to separate them into 3 different races. Uthlar mentions Karkillan the Minotaur, but the PCs seem to gloss over this. Uthlar begins to get his courage back. Holden smashes Uthlar in the knee. Uthlar mentions one last important bit of information: the Red Hand is coming to slaughter the Human River village. Asha presses Uthlar some more for information, asking if the Horde will continue pushing eastward past Drellin's ferry. Uthlar, his courage and adrenaline back, simply keeps raving about the Red Hand coming. Annoyed, Holden orders Lovin to shoot him where it hurts, but I tell him that Uthlar is too far gone and any further attacks would kill him. Holden then grabs Uthlar's broken knee and twists it. Roaring in pain, the hobgoblin simply keeps swearing and says that he's confident his brethren would feast on their innards, even if he were to die. The party leaves Uthlar, and Sorina leans over to Ashi, saying that it was nice of them to leave the hobgoblin for them to take care of for the night. Lovin hears this, turns around, and shoots Uthlar in the head. Sorina sighs, drags out the body herself, and orders one of her men to bury it out back. The captain tells the party that Vroth Keep wasn't far, and that meeting up with the woodsman Hor could help them get through the Witchwood without much trouble. Shopping. The party visits Delorazan, but she's closing down for the day, so the party goes to sleep. Early the next morning, they go to Morland Coal Hewer, who accepts Holden as a fellow dwarf, and purchases the masterwork longswords and suits of mail. The party donates the rest of the gear to the town guard, much to Sorina's delight. The party spends the gold buying scrolls from Brother Derny, the local cleric of Dolara, female Pelayer to non-Aberan players. She's one of the sovereign host, the predominant pantheon-based religion, and Serti Aaron the Wise. Finally, they buy mounts and gear from Delorazan, and ride off for Hor's place. Hor the badass and Hydra soup. Hor greets the PCs in typical hillbilly fashion. They make their intent to explore Vroth Keep known. Hor blows them off and tells them that it's just down the road, can't miss it. He responds a bit favorably to their flattery, but since the PCs feel they can't trust him yet, they only speak in uncertain terms. He responds by saying the wood isn't that unsafe, and that while the keep is haunted, they don't need his help. It's only when they mention the goblins that he perks up and offers his help. Not long after, they arrive at the Blackwater Causeway. Hor takes point, tells the PCs to keep watch, and leads the crossing. The PCs dismount and take the horses with them. Hor fails his spot check and misses the Hydra completely. Ah hell. I didn't know there was a Hydra here. Roll initiative. Initiative goes as follows: Kikini, Lovin, Hydra, Hor, Ashe, Holden. Kikini's knowledge check result spooks the player. She advocates either mounting the horses and attempting to run full speed across the causeway, which would have made an awesome chase scene reminiscent of that one area in Metal Slug, or running back toward the town. Holden stows his maul and draws his great sword. I simply tell her that the Hydra will give chase, that horses can't run at full speed with a rider, the causeway is too slippery and rickety to cross with charging horses, and that the beast will follow them all the way back to town if they ran. Kikini uses inertial armor, while Lovin tries to get cover and hides to snipe. The Hydra takes the path of least resistance, the river. Ashe fires a ray of enfeeblement from a scroll, greatly crippling the Hydra's abilities. Its attack bonus is down to +5, and its bites no longer had their damage bonus. Hor rapid shots, hitting both times. Holden scrambles straight into the path of the monster as it swims up the river to where the causeway crosses the deep water. Kikini opens fire with her energy bolt, but rolls low. To make matters worse, Hydras have good reflex saves despite their size, and takes very little damage. All its heads are intact. Lovin sneaks the Hydra with his bow, dealing a good amount of damage. The Hydra moves in to attack Holden, using its superior reach to savage him with bites. Only one hits, and deals a pathetic 4 damage. Hor keeps the arrows pumping, dealing 7 more damage. Ashe fires a magic missile from her wand, dealing 2 damage. Holden pulls out a blast disc, sets it to proximity, and plants it in the bridge. Turn 3. Kikini blasts again, searing off ahead. Lovin sees what his brother is doing, and makes a run for it, climbing back over the causeway to the side opposite the Hydra. The Hydra stays put, attacks Holden with everything, and misses all but 1 bite. Again. Hor goes, "What th hell are ya doin'?" Keep shootin', and stays on the bridge. One more rapid shot, 17 damage. Ashe makes a run for it, jumping into the bug on the east side of the causeway, and Holden makes a run for it, ducking under the Hydras would have been devastating sextuple AOO, none of it hit, and jumps into the bayou as well. Turn 4. Kikini blasts yet again. A second head comes off, dealing damage to the beast's body. Lovin is already off and running away. The Hydra takes the bait and steps right into the blast disc's range. Boom. The bridge is sheared off its posts and falls into the water on the far end. Unfortunately, the Hydra makes its save again. It does take enough area damage to shear off another head, though. Hor almost falls, but manages to stay up and keeps shooting. I hope that wasn't the only one ya got, because it's still coming. Another rapid shot and the Hydra's HP is down to 26. Holden swears at his failed plan, stomps back toward the Hydra and plunges his greatsword into the body. And rolls a 20. And confirms with a 17. The Hydra's heart bursts under the impact of 28 damage, and the whole thing collapses into the water. End of session. Thoughts? The PCs have extracted a good amount of information from the clues that have been dropped, but their patchwork of intelligence isn't meshing together just yet. 1. They do know that a certain high wormlord is directing attacks through a lesser wormlord. 2. They do know that the hobgoblins are planning a massive attack on Drellin's Ferry, possibly with bugbears and goblins as well. 3. Karkilan the Minotaur is mentioned, but the PCs don't really realize he's a Minotaur. 4. The PCs know the base's location. Vroth Keep is their next target. 5. The hobgoblins worship Tiamat. What they don't know. 1. The Rax Hassa attack was more involved than they realize. 2. The exact structure of the horde is unknown. 3. The relevance of the title Wormlord is still unknown. 4. They don't know when the Day of Ruin is. 5. They don't know exactly how the horde plans to move, or how far they're moving. In fact, they don't know if there's a horde at all. They only know of the Red Hand. The first encounter was a bloodbath. I was consistently unlucky with rolls except for Lucky, and in the end he got fried with a single energy missile. The encounter is a lot easier than its L lets on, as the module admits, but even as a martial adept, Uthlar sucked. I blame it on bad rolls. I really didn't know what to do with Zar. I figured he could add some battlefield control, but all he did was sneak up and then start attacking. Too little, too late. I may have given a lot of treasure in that first encounter, but the PCs aren't going to get much otherwise. A bunch of low-level, cute treasure, situational but otherwise useful, instead of high-level let's sell this loot, seems to draw the players in more. The Hydra encounter was priceless. The module has the Hydra running away when its HP goes down, but I figured the PCs could kill it anyway, so I let it fight on. Horror's presence did make the battle way easier, but in the end, the PCs still took the glory. Asha didn't do much damage, but Ray of Enfeeblement was absolutely crippling even if it didn't drop the Hydra's STR to penalty levels. I'm concerned about Lovin. He's had a lot of opportunities to sneak, but it seems he's not able to optimize well. The player isn't so sure about what direction to take with his build either. I was suggesting going with crossbow sniper, but he's still considering it. Any advice? Next week, Vroth Keep. Session 3, covering days 2 to 4 of the adventure. Much wickedness is smote with a flying, burning, stuffed owlbear, allies are made and an old paladin is given a chance at redemption, and the PCs behold their first dragon. Hydra Aftermath. After defeating the Hydra, the party searches the wagon and retrieves the +1 mithril breastplate. This goes to Asha. The party crosses and continues north. The trip to Vroth Keep is approximately an hour from the Blackwater Causeway, but 30 minutes into their trip, they run into a not-so-friendly forest denizen. Hor spots a Giralon stalking the PCs in the woods. The monster growls at them. Initiative: Kikini, Giralon, Holden, Lovin, Asha, Hor. This random encounter goes by surprisingly fast. Kikini opens up by moving behind some trees to prevent the Giralon from charging at her, but it covers the distance pretty quickly by double moving. It spotted her first. Everyone else moves to close in. At the top of the second round, Kikini uses a simple but highly effective power on the raging monkey, Deja Vu. Naturally the creature fails its save. It has to repeat its last action, so it moves toward Kikini. Again. A risky tactic, but this prevents the ape from using its decidedly deadly full attack. By this time everyone was within its 10-foot reach, but due to Deja Vu, the Giralon couldn't do a damn thing. Everybody wails on the monster with Hor joining in to flank and plant a dagger in the Giralon's ribs. This continues for one more turn. The Giralon fails to make any attacks at all until Holden bashes its skull in with Mountain Hammer. One dead ape. The party continues north and arrive at the periphery of Vroth Keep at around 11 AM of day 2. 12th Lharvian, 998 YK by Abaron's actual calendar. Lovin and Hor scout ahead and scout the perimeter. Hor identifies the scattered large skeletons as those of werbears and werboars, but apart from seeing the breach in the wall and the crushed gates, they don't find anything else outside. Hor didn't want to go in, and Lovin wouldn't dare venture in alone, so the two retreat to the camp. Kikini is completely out of power points, and deciding they didn't want to enter the keep without heavy artillery, the party sets up camp and rests, with Lovin staking out the castle from a tree. He spots the fake haunt. Of course he just knows there's a glow and eerie moaning, and the smoke rising from the keep. Once more before they enter the keep, Lovin, Hor and Caesar the Iron Defender sneak towards the breach in the southern wall. They hear hobgoblins making lame elf jokes. Hor translates, and they see the embers of a fire burning low, casting a flickering light. They report back to the rest of the party. At approximately 8 PM, the team moves in, with Hor remaining in the camp to watch over the horses. The party decides to enter the doors to the right of the entrance, the stables. Listening carefully, Holden detects creatures speaking Goblin inside. With nothing else to do, the party sticks to the wall of the North Guard Tower, and Holden opens the door. The goblin riders inside were too busy with their game of stick beetle to notice that they were being creeped up on, so the PCs get a surprise round. However, due to bad positioning, only Holden had line of sight into the stable's interior. All of them end up passing their standard actions. Round 1, Holden and Ashe roll 23s on their initiative and go first. Holden enters and attacks the first goblin rider, taking off about half his HP using his greatsword. Ashe uses up her second eternal wand of shield use for the day. The gobbo, already damaged, closer to the door makes a run for the Wurg stables, but Holden makes his AOO and cuts the goblin in half before he's able to do anything. Next, Caesar, Ashe's homunculus, runs inside and attacks the second goblin, taking out a good chunk of its HP. Hearing the death scream of the goblin, one of the Wurgs, the closer one, closes the ground between its stall and Ashe quickly, and tries to bite. However, Ashe's high AC keeps the Wurg at bay. Kikini enters, and also raises her inertial armo. The second Wurg rushes to confront Ashe and misses as well. Lovin enters, rapier drawn, and runs up to the haystack in position to attack the last goblin. Lovin sneaks, Rider B is still flat-footed, but rolls low. He ends up dealing only about 12 damage, but his bleeding attack renders him a dead man walking. He retaliates, attacking Lovin, but he misses badly. Round 2, Holden turns on Wurg B, while Ashe attempts to put some distance between herself and the Wurgs, 5-foot stepping back toward the door and shooting at the goblin with her magic missile wand. Her homunculus attacks the second goblin, tearing its throat out and killing it before it gets to act again. The first Wurg attacks Holden, but is unable to bypass his AC. Kikini fires cold energy missile at the two Wurgs, A saves, but Kikini rolls really badly. A only takes 4 damage, while B takes the full 8 damage. Still not daunted, the second Wurg fights on and attacks Lovin, but misses. Lovin tries to move into a flanking position, risking the AOO from the first one. Wurg A hits and easily trips Lovin. This round is incredibly noisy, with the Wurgs yelping loudly. The manticore in the nest at the southern end of the keep climbs onto the roof of its lair, peering at the sources of the sound, but doesn't bother to do anything. Round 3, Holden attacks the first Wurg this time, rolling maximum damage, dropping it down to 8 HP. Ashe moves back even further and tries to use her wand once more, but rolls low on her UMD check. Caesar runs to engage Wurg B, killing it. Kikini conserves her power points and passes her turn, while Lovin gets up, provoking an AOO from Wurg A. He gets hit again, and his attack misses too. Round 4, Holden finally takes down Wurg A with Mountain Hammer. The party quickly closes the door and tries to figure out what to do. After a brief discussion, they wait for any reactions to the sound of fighting. Nothing really happens, so they decide to check out the building on the other end of the keep, the Manticore's lair. They sneak up, avoiding the break the wall where the flickering firelight had been seen earlier. They open the door in the southern tower, cramming into it. Holden tries to listen through the door to the Manticore lair, but hears nothing. Ashe can see why. Ashe was the only party member left outside the southern tower. She sees the Manticore looming on the roof of its lair. It peers at them and says, "No bother, Koth inside tower." A few half-hearted attempts at diplomacy end with the Manticore telling them to go away since Koth pay better, and retreats groggily into its lair. It's not the brightest crayon in the box. Holden and Caesar take up positions near the crack in the barracks' eastern wall, while the rest of the party goes to the north end. Holden screams, with a thick dwarven accent, "Help! Help!" Instead of rushing to his aid, one of the hobgoblins simply laughs, saying, "I'm so drunk, I can hear a dwarf speaking in bad goblin." Much laughing echoes out of the barracks. Holden hears a deep, angry grunt from the other side of the room. Holden, help! Gods damn it, help! Second hobgoblin, hey, I think I can hear it too. Help! Help! By now, the hobgoblins are in stitches. Holden hears the grunt again. It sounds like a much larger creature. The Minotaur can smell the dwarf now, so it angrily yells at its minions to wise up. Intruders were about. The barracks goes silent for a moment, and then the scream of drawn steel rips out of the room. Holden steps straight into the breach in the wall, and he spots Karkillan the Minotaur, and 3 of the 4 hobgoblins. Initiative. Kikini, Koth, not joining the battle yet, but he rolled 24, Lovin, Veteran A, B, Caesar C, Karkillan, Ashe, D, Holden. Kikini opens the door, sees Koth's stuffed owlbear and the 4th hobgoblin, and improvises. Telekinetic thrust sends the owlbear and one of the hobgoblins, B. Flying. I made an honest mistake here, completely forgetting the augmentation cap on Chinook powers. I rule that the owlbear, due to poor stuffing, is only about 100 pounds, while the hobgoblin with his armor totals about 225 pounds. She augments the power further than she should have been able to, and flings the owlbear, large enough to hit more than one target because they were all adjacent, while she sends B flying toward A. Kikini crit misses on C, but hits D and Karkilin with the owlbear, dealing 4d6 damage. B fails his save and, being dense and heavy, would deal an astounding 9d6 damage to A. Thankfully, Kikini rolls low and B smacks into the wall as a ducks. B falls on top of A. Love and leaps into the doorway, rapier drawn, but sticks to the wall. A is able to disentangle himself and attacks Kikini. He misses. B likewise gets up and stands beside A, right inside the doorway. Caesar runs in and sticks close to Lovin. C sprints for the doorway as well, provoking an AOO from Lovin, attempting to engage the deadly caster. Karkilin moves to the crushed wall to attack Holden and misses, while Asha casts Fireball from a scroll. A tremendous burst of fire sets Karkilin, C, D, Karkilin's bed, C, and D's bunk, and the owlbear alight. Karkilin saves, but C and D fail. Everyone survives it, though. D manages to run away from the burning upholstery, and then Holden goes in to attack the Minotaur. Once more, Kikini flings the burning stuffed owlbear, but at this point I remember the augmentation limit. Kikini shouldn't be able to augment at all, since she's only at Manifestor LV5. We don't bother backtracking the previous telekinetic thrust, though, but this time, she can only fling the owlbear. Once more, she hurls it at the now angry Minotaur. At this point, Koth opens the door to his tower, asking what the blazes is going on, sees that the blazes are going on, and quickly casts invisibility. I change the music I'm playing to, the encounter has just become a boss battle. Koth actually double moves out of the place and is now in the courtyard, however. The Manticore climbs onto the roof of its lair again after smelling the scorched Minotaur. Lovin attacks C, but finds his blade parried. A and B continue to ineffectually attack Kikini. Karkilin tries to chop Holden down, but misses again. Asha uses her last scroll of Fireball, dropping Karkilin and D. C soon goes down, then B memory is fuzzy as to how this happened, but eventually, it was just the party, the invisible Koth, and the Manticore, who still isn't attacking, and A, standing in the doorway of the barracks. Koth spots Asha and Kikini, and drops a fireball on them. Asha saves, while Kikini fails. Kikini is now at critical HP, while Asha is in the low teens. The fireball also catches A in the blast and vaporizes him. Lovin tries to go take a sniping position outside by the boulder at the barracks northeast corner. Holden spits curses, going after Koth, while the Manticore rains its spines at Asha. Kikini is thankfully out of the Manticore's line of sight. 2 of the spines hit Asha is now down to single digits. Holden yells at Kikini, telling her to get the hell into the room, but she bravely says she still has a job to do, and uses the last of her PP to energy push Koth. He saves against most of the damage, but he gets flung into the pile of Werbor bones leaning against the southern guard tower. Flitting behind the boulders in the courtyard like a shadow, Lovin shoots from his bow, but is too far to make sneak attacks. Asha also takes one last shot with a scroll of Scorching Ray before running back into the room to help Kikini get back up on her feet. Koth goes invisible. With the girls vulnerable inside the building, Holden rushes in to support them, while the Manticore jumps to the southern wall and perches there, shooting at Holden. The girls use Asha's potions to heal, while Koth reappears and blasts Holden with the dreaded Ray of Enfeeblement. Caesar charges Koth, who fights it away with his Morning Star, while the Manticore jumps down beside Koth to defend him. Eventually, Caesar shakes down Koth, dropping him to -1. The Manticore flies away. The party levels up. The encounter gave massive XP, and creativity got them through it despite having 2 near deaths. Even better, Koth isn't dead, so Holden stabilizes him and Lovin leaves him gagged and bound. They drag Koth close to the burning bed, douse him in alcohol, and have the homunculus lie down on top of him to prevent him from escaping. They decide to go to the 2nd floor first to check out the ghost, finding the dead man and the glowing light. Holden performs a few rites for the dead farmer and puts out the continuous flame. They then check out the room below. Due to crappy sense skill ranks, Holden can't find the vault entrance despite his stone cunning racial trait. I rule that he can sense something is off about the 4, but it takes 20 minutes of searching by Kikini to find the vault entrance. They climb in. The first thing they check out is the skeleton by the eastern alcove. They check it out to see that a silvered great axe is embedded in its ribcage. The arm of Vroth is engraved in dwarven runes on the axe haft, while the silver torch emblem is embossed on the axe blades. At first they surmise that Vroth somehow committed suicide, but Holden says it would have been impossible for him to swing a great axe into his own chest. A sneaking suspicion comes upon them: Vroth may have turned against his men for some reason. Holden does a little rip ritual on the skeleton, then Lovin comes in and shoves the skeleton unceremoniously out of the way. Holden picks up the great axe. Lovin's player realizes he has no ranks in open lock. Since he leveled up, I just let him put ranks in, but he still keeps failing. Eventually he just takes 20 on each lock, taking over 3 hours to open everything. Asha gets impatient, imbues the big chest with the spell storing item infusion, putting knock into it, and basically has the chest open itself. They claim the Staff of Life and the other odds and ends inside the chest. While Lovin slaves over the locks until past midnight, Holden goes back to camp, wakes Hor up, and tells him what happened. I forget to give the PCs the replacements for Vroth's bastard sword and gauntlets of ogre power, though they should have picked those up. I'll send them the list. Asha and Kikini meanwhile read Vroth's journals, learning how he boasted of killing over 300 lycanthropes. They weren't all that big. This was supposed to imply that he massacred children, though they didn't catch that until I explained it later. Then skip to his last entry: we were attacked. My men were torn to pieces. Those left shouldn't find out what happened to me. Implying he got bitten, and Kikini feels her suspicions were confirmed. The players first think that it would be a good idea to give Hor the deed to Vroth Keep, but don't tell him this. As they move into the barracks, Hor points out something the players missed almost entirely: the war room. As they read Koth's notes, Asha and Holden no goblin, the PCs finally realize that they're in much deeper than they thought they were. Hor then sees Koth, draws his dagger, and almost kills him. Holden tells him that if he keeps Koth alive, they might have chances to kill more goblins, so Hor leaves him alone. They bed down in the safety of the vault and rest until the next morning. The PCs drag Koth back to Drellin's ferry, along with the map and Hor. They immediately set up an interrogation session with the town's leaders. At first, Nora Whiston is pleased to know that they've cleared out Vroth Keep, but then Holden shows them the map, translating each note into common, writing the notes onto the map. Nora Whiston is flustered and indecisive. He has no idea what to do, and at the moment is in denial. The PCs then turn to Koth and have him talk about this. Interestingly enough, Holden and Lovin don't actually physically inflict any damage on Koth, and most of their attempts fail. They prefer not to use the elixirs of truth in Koth's bag. Koth refuses to say anything about their size and what the Red Hand is, though the party has a pretty good idea that it's a large force, able to easily raise the Vale's hamlets. Koth says that they're only hamlets, so it won't take much to destroy them anyway. Asha really knows how to push the buttons here. Holden: how many? Infantry, cavalry, artillery? Koth grins, baring teeth. Holden: how many tribes are there? Koth: we are only one tribe now. Asha: how many are there in your tribe? Noro: we can handle 100 or so. Koth: if you could handle it, you wouldn't be asking for help. Asha: so apparently, you weren't trusted with holding the Skull Gorge Bridge. Koth: they trusted me with the vanguard. Asha: so you're only part of a larger force. Koth: nervous, seething grin. When Asha finally mentions how important the Skull Gorge Bridge is to Noro, he goes ballistic, while Koth goes pale. Noro says that it's the only source of trade for them. The PCs are able to learn that Koth really is only in charge of the advance party. Noro is slowly being convinced, but he refuses to mobilize his town to evacuate until he gets a number. It's just too much trouble for a possible false alarm. Ash is able to make a knowledge, history, check regarding the Ghost Lord, and remembers him as a powerful caster from the goblinoid Dhakani Empire, and that his contemporaries were the old Dhakani province of Rist. Had to throw out the idea that they were an ancient human kingdom, since this area had long been under the Galifar kingdom. Asha also suspects that while Karn and Sarvith sound like goblin names, she thinks Tirgarun and Ozyrandian aren't. Koth gives vague answers to this question. In the end, they decide that they can't do much more. Holden turns Koth over to Hor. Hor says that it's no fun killing him with him bound, but Holden warns him that untying him would allow him to cast spells. Hor says, "This is for my daughter," and plunges his dagger into Koth's eye. The PCs leave the deed to Vroth keep with Sorina, and say that she could probably use it to hold the Dawn Way for a while longer. In the meantime, they were headed to Skull Gorge. They buy a few more scrolls and leave Drellin's Ferry at about 1 p.m. of day 3. Hor mentions the effigy tribal marker up north along the Dawn Way. They could check it out too. They travel the whole day, way into the evening. At about 10 p.m., they see the marker and decide to walk up the track at Hor's suggestion. After 2 hours of walking into the night, they get to the ruined fortress and find an old human sitting by his cooking dire boar. They spy on him, listening to his ranting, and eventually they see the bottom half of the silver torch tattoo on the man's face. Holden decides to approach in a diplomatic manner, thinking that as a Silver Flame member, the man could help them. He moves without stealth into the clearing, carrying his, Vroth's, axe in a non-threatening gesture. The man notices Holden's Silver Flame symbol and goes into a rage. "Holden, the Silver Flame needs your aid. Warclegnaw, the Silver Flame abandoned me. They turned on me." At this point he changes into his Werbear form and says he just wants to be left alone, and that he wanted nothing to do with them, while breaking into coughing fits. Holden makes a diplomacy check. "You did not kill them, the demon that holds your body did. Your soul is innocent of those crimes," tells him about the situation, and eventually, the Werbear says that he was willing to help if they gave him back his axe. Holden then realizes that Warclegnaw was Amory Vroth, and he offers him the weapon. Vroth says that he may still be able to find some of his tribe, the tribe that had accepted him after he showed that he repented of slaughtering their children, and that he would be able to fight for justice again. What he really wanted was a chance to redeem himself. "I do not want to go back to Thrain. They will not accept me. They will kill me. But I will fight for justice once more. Only the flame can judge me. I do not want to go back to the church and suffer their prejudices. Now leave me be." An old paladin has a lot to think about. To pray about. He offers them some food before they leave, and also says they can stay for the night. The party eats, while Lovin attempts to amuse Vroth by telling him about the flying burning owlbear. His miserable facade cracks, just a bit. The party soon leaves Vroth, and continues hiking towards Skull Gorge Bridge. They arrive at approximately 4 a.m. Here be dragons. And they see the bridge. And the hobgoblins. An Ozyrandian. The party decides that it might be too late if they wait until midday, if they rested, so they decide to pull back about an hour's walk and begin to strategize. An hour before dawn, they get back up and begin the walk back to Skull Gorge. End of session. It just keeps getting better and better. Now that Kikini's player knows what her powers do, she's able to function much more effectively. I just fear she may be burning up her points too fast. She's got to learn how to pace herself. Burning owlbear. The Vroth equals Warclegnaw angle turned out beautifully. Holden really felt that he was serving the greater good by consorting even with a lycanthrope to thwart the much greater threat of a demon overlord's cult rampaging across Eberron. At first I was a bit troubled that the PCs decided to go back to Drellin's Ferry first, but I realized that I should let the PCs move as they please. It paid off. The interrogation was a bit messy. I can't remember half of what they got out of Koth. For the most part, they didn't really get anything. They didn't bother using magic, and frankly, Koth would have made his saves easily if they forced him to drink the elixir. My plan was to make him tell the truth in Infernal, which nobody in the party knew. It didn't come to that, though, and now, Koth is dead. The PCs have now bought Drellin's Ferry 3 more days. Let's see if they can raise that to 6 days by wrecking Skull Gorge Bridge.